Hello and welcome to the Tea Time with Joe podcast. I'm your host, Joe Kim. Before we dive into the different episodes with guests, I wanted to publish this intro episode outlining the who, what, when, where, and why for starting this podcast. Let's start with the why. During COVID, like everyone else, I had much more free time, which honestly was a bit uncomfortable for me. I enjoy being busy and balancing multiple things on my plate. I'm not good with silence, but from this season came about a lot of space to reflect. During this time of reflection, I came across Jim Collins, who's a best-selling author in the business world. One of his ideas is called the Hedgehog Concept, which has individuals and leaders ask themselves the following questions. Number 1, what am I deeply passionate about? Number 2, what am I encoded for? In other words, what can I be the best in the world at? And number 3, what best drives my economic engine? As you can tell from the last question, this framework is primarily for entrepreneurs and businesses, but I felt this exercise was still valuable to think through, and I would encourage anyone seeking to best match their strengths with what they do to reflect on the same questions. I'll walk you through how I answer these questions. Let's start with what I'm deeply passionate about. I love connecting with people through deep conversations, getting to know what gets them excited. It's infectious when someone talks about something they love and you can feel that energy. I'm passionate about servant leadership, making a positive difference in an individual's life and empowering others to make a significant impact in their fields and those they encounter. I love the idea of coaching and seeing others succeed after investing in their growth. I love learning about how to optimize ourselves, whether it be through higher energy, nutrition, stress management, and other practical techniques. The context for this is we all have our unique strengths and abilities. We also have our limits with our minds and bodies. It's important to steward what God's given us well, so I'm interested in learning about these types of things. There were other items I wrote, but these are the highlights from my list. Next is what am I encoded for, or what can I be the best in the world at? This felt challenging to answer because many of us don't like to brag about ourselves, but we all have our unique gifts and it's important to acknowledge what those are. I believe one of my strengths is the ability to connect with people on a deeper level, asking good questions that dive into what motivates them. I'm good at remembering details, especially about things that are important to the people I'm interacting with. So reflecting on what I'm passionate about, connecting with people through deep conversations, and things I believe I'm gifted at, asking good questions and remembering important details about others, planted the idea for starting this podcast. Podcasts provide an outlet for both of these ideas to come together nicely. Now that you know the why, I want to go into what you can expect as a listener. In this podcast, you will hear interviews where I dive deep with guests on what makes their eyes shine. This idea of eyes shining comes from one of my favorite books called The Art of Possibility by Benjamin Zander. Ben is a conductor for the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. He's also given a TED Talk, and in it, he said, "I had an amazing discovery. This is a really big deal for me. I was 45, I was conducting for over 20 years, and suddenly, one day, I had this kind of road to Damascus event. Eureka! I realized the conductor of an orchestra doesn't make a sound. He depends for his power on his ability to make other people powerful. I realized my job was to awaken possibility in other people. I wanted to know whether I was doing that. You know how you find out? You look at their eyes. If their eyes are shining, you know you're doing it. If their eyes are not shining, you get to ask a question. Who am I being that my players' eyes are not shining?" End quote. Ben is talking about the players in his orchestra and creating the space for his musicians to live into possibility with their playing. But I've experienced this too, talking to others about things that they light up about. Now that is what I want to capture on this show. I've been socializing this idea of starting a podcast for over a year now. When I share the concept of talking with guests on whatever topic makes their eyes light up, inevitably I get asked, well, what makes my eyes light up? To answer that, I need to share a story. A few years ago, I went to a local coffee shop and ordered green tea. The barista brought out a contraption that contained loose leaf tea with water and set it on our table. He said to wait a few minutes before pouring it into the mug. This was all new to me because probably like most of you, I only knew those Lipton brand tea bags, put it in some hot water, and called it good. Intrigued, I let the loose leaf tea and hot water steep for a few minutes and then poured it into the cup. I took a sip and it tasted totally different. My first thought was, wow, this is tea. After this experience, I nerded out and learned how different types of tea vary on the proper temperature and time it should be brewing. Wanting to bring this revelation home with me, I bought an electric kettle that allowed for different temperature settings, a loose leaf tea steeper, some loose leaf tea, and enjoy a cup almost daily now. So what makes my eyes light up? Enjoying things the way they were meant to be enjoyed. There's such beauty in that idea to me. This tea experience being an example of that. Hence the name of the podcast, Tea Time with Joe. I want to chat with guests about whatever makes their eyes light up. I don't necessarily need to know a thing about what it is. In fact, it could be even better I don't, because I'll have a genuine curiosity into learning more on the topic. The specific topics will vary, but it's the guests that are the main subject of this show. I find people fascinating, and if anything, the podcast will give me an excuse to have interesting conversations with people. When can you expect to catch new episodes? The goal is to release one season of 5 episodes. That's it, at least for now. If there are 10 people that really enjoy the conversations or find it valuable in some way, I would categorize this as a success. I'm seeking quality over quantity. I understand the longer episode length is not for everyone, and that's okay. I won't be offended if you feel this podcast is not a good fit. But can I make a pitch to those that have an aversion to longer podcasts? The purpose of this show is to dive into deep conversations with people, and just like enjoying tea, it takes time. I wouldn't be true to myself if I cut things short just for the sake of catering to the masses. Furthermore, I believe when you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. I'm going to stay true to the original vision for the show. If you are someone who would normally skip over a show because of length, I would challenge you to give this a shot. It'll only be 5 episodes, and I believe in an age where life is way too fast, slowing down, tuning in, and going on this journey with me will be worth your time. Lastly, I need to discuss the team behind the show. Zach Rao is the producer of the podcast. All of the audio quality and technical acumen of how to put this all together is because of him. He's been a supporter since day one, and we agreed early on that if I was going to do this, he was going to be part of it. Thank you, Zach. The intro song you'll hear was created by a buddy, Peter Weiss. Peter produces music on the side and is extremely talented. Just some background on the song. Believe it or not, we went back and forth through 7 different versions. I had a specific vision for what I wanted, and Peter was patient enough to keep tweaking until we were both happy with how it turned out. You'll only hear the beginning of the song during the regular episodes, so I wanted to take the opportunity for you to hear the whole thing, which is less than 2 minutes at the end of this episode. Thank you, Peter. Thank you to Emily, family, and friends who've heard me talk about this for over a year now. Your feedback and encouragement has been immensely helpful. Finally, thank you, God, for providing your grace so richly each and every moment. You've instilled in us a desire to create, and this gives me an amazing opportunity to do so. If you've made it this far, thank you, and I'll catch you in the first episode.